Okay, Shabbat Shalom. Right now, or today is Shabbat. It is the 5,779 and the 11th month and 15th day. This is based on the sighted moon calendar, based on the crescent moon. Okay, I got a viewer. Well, I'm trying to wipe this camera because it's really blurry. Should have done this before the stream, but it's very, as you can tell, this isn't planned very well. Hopefully it just gets clearer and clearer. Yeah, this is what it looks like to have a few drinks. Okay. I don't know if the sound is working. This is just a test pilot video. See, what happened is that I've had this piece of tape over my camera for so long, and now I'm finally just removed it just so I can do this live stream. It's a little bit better, but still very blurry. Might have to restart the stream. Just see where the gunk is. Okay, well that's a lot better now. Live stream of cleaning my camera. That's what the live stream is about. No, that's not what it's really about. Okay. Getting there. Wow, this thing is really... There you go. It's somewhat decent. Wish it could be sharper, but I have to make do with what we have. Okay. So I didn't expect anyone to be watching this, but thank you for joining in. So the point of this live stream is basically for those who are observing the seventh-day Sabbath. If you're not, welcome either way. And I've decided, I was moved to, basically what I do on this day is I usually, you devote more time to extra Bible study, extra prayer, things like that. And I visit this website called Sighted Moon, sightedmoon.com. And every week or every Saturday, or I should say every Sabbath day or Shabbat day, they release a newsletter. And in the newsletter is very interesting topics, somewhat controversial. I'd say there's a lot of controversy in these newsletters when it comes to biblical knowledge and even stuff that's happening in our modern day, things that are happening in the news. I might have to end the stream just to see if it worked. All right, let me just check it out here. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing. Okay, now it's fully plugged. Testing 1, 2, 3. All right, so I'm just in the middle of the article. I preferably wanted to start at the beginning of the article but since they're so long, they're quite lengthy. That's why sometimes getting through one of the newsletters from the website sightedmoon.com, it takes a long time. It can take, I'm going to say, maybe 2 hours or more. So, that's the point of this live stream, just for those who don't want to sit down and read the newsletters. They're quite lengthy, which can be good, which can be bad. I think it's a good thing because, the more information, the better. Just make sure to, that I'm not going through information that isn't very significant or important. But for the most part, I do find the newsletters to be, there's not too many things that are written there that are just a waste of time. So anyway, I'm in the middle of the article. It's from last week. After I go through this, I'll go read the next one. So we'll be current. But this is from last week or last Shabbat, and talking about, what is the topic here? Ecumenism. Okay. So I'm just going to read it from where I left off. It says here from the article, we return to our question at the outset of this article. Can a remnant of the true church be preserved? This is an article within an article. God preserved the royal line of David, King David, by causing Yehosheba to hide away Joash. As such, he can be seen as a symbol of the last day church. I'm just going to add there my own personal thing. Church is it's a word that isn't actually biblical. It's an extra biblical word. If you actually look up the word in Greek, it is ekklesia, which means called out ones. Anyway, that's a side note. It is persecuted, the churches, by humanism and materialism, the works of man. Okay, only a small number survives as the true church. The prophet Micah, who alerted us to the wiles and deceptions of the statutes of Omri, has the last word. But as for me, I watch and hope for I'm going to say his name, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, or Jehovah. I wait for Elohim, my Savior. My Elohim will hear me. So I replaced the word God with Elohim. And the Lord, obviously, not obviously, but for those that don't know, the Lord, all capitals in the Bible, that was a placeholder for the actual, in the original scriptures, it will say Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh in Hebrew. So that's what I'm replacing that with, what was actually in the scriptures. Okay, we're continuing on. If we practice these statutes, Elohim will be faithful. May we be found among the last day believing remnant. Okay, so that's the end of the article within the article. Continuing on, the newsletter. Brethren, did you see what we just read taking place on the very news right now? Does Omri and Ahab not sound like Donald Trump's policies for the USA? Okay, well, I just have to make a note that the author of this newsletter does not agree with the article that he's referencing, and neither do I. I don't agree with that either. Has not the church leaders all surrounded him in a bid for prestige and influence in future policy? Oh, never mind. No, actually, this is the writer. This is the writer of the newsletter. And I too, like President Trump, and the things he has done. Okay, so the author is saying that he likes President Trump. We may not agree on everything he does. I mean, who does really? Who agrees with everything somebody does? But for the most part, let's see. Does Omri and Ahab not sound like Donald Trump's policies for the USA? Okay. Moving on. Do not forget that in the last day, or maybe it should be written, the last days, that Elijah must first come. Okay, so that's an alarm. All right. So we're still in Shabbat, still holy time. So another reason for me reading these newsletters is because there are quite a bit of typos and things like that. So I'm trying to correct that to make it easier to go through. Anyway, I don't want to pause too much and just continue reading. Okay, Malachi 4, verse 5. Behold, I am sending you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of Jehovah. And he shall turn the hearts of the fathers to the sons, and the heart of the sons to their fathers, that I not come and strike the earth with utter destruction. Anyway, I just realized the quality of this video is like early 2000s. It looks like it's filmed with a potato. Anyway. Continuing on. How does Elijah do this? He teaches the people the Sabbath, the Shabbat, the holy days of Leviticus 23, and the sabbatical and jubilee years. Those are found in Leviticus 25, I believe. When the people start to keep these things, they are turning towards the Father. And the heart of our Father in heaven will be turned to us when we obey. Do not forget what Athaliah did in the days of Elijah. A new Athaliah will also come and kill all the prophets of Jehovah except Elijah. Let me just stop and think about that. Okay. Wow. Possibly. I'm not going to, speculation there, but possibly. The martyrdom of the saints is coming. Is this Athaliah going to be the great whore of Babylon? We wait and watch. And there's a picture of President Trump hugging, I think, a religious figure. Let me now quote to you from Reverend W.M. Pascoe Goward in his book, The Post-Captivity Names of Israel. Oh, this is interesting. Okay, here we go. Buckle up. King Omri was to Israel what the great lawgivers were to Greece and to Rome. What Malmutius was to the ancient Britons, and what Alfred the great Saxon lawgiver, was to the Saxons, and what Henry VII and Elizabeth were to the modern British world as statute makers and reformers. That and more King Omri was to Israel. They all codified existing law. Omri invented the system of statutes, invented the system of statutes, making and established it in Israel. Okay, that wasn't grammatically correct. From that has come the legislative system of democracy. Okay. The indictment of the Lord. Micah 6:1. Hear now what Jehovah says. Arise, contend with the mountains, and let the hills hear your voice. Verse 2. Mountains hear Jehovah's case, the constant foundations of the earth. For Jehovah has a quarrel with his people, and he will plead his case with Israel. Verse 3. O my people, what have I done to you? And in what have I made you weary? Testify against me. For I brought you up out of the land of Egypt and redeemed you out of the house of slaves. I sent Moses, Aaron, and Miriam before you. O my people, remember now what Balak, king of Moab, planned, and what Balaam, the son of Beor, answered from Shittim to Gilgal, so that you may know the righteous acts of Jehovah. What does the Lord require? Okay. Actually, I'm going to just reference these verses. I'm not going to read them through. It's Micah chapter 6, verses 6 to 8. Sorry, 6 to 16. Okay, you can look at that later. You can read that on your own time. Seek the Lord and live. Amos chapter 5, verses 1 to scrolling down. But just roll down, verses 1 to 27. Okay. So I won't read the scriptures there. You can read that on your own time, or look it up yourselves. I want to wrap this up before I move on, and it will upset some of you. The statutes of Omri was the constitution of Israel at that time. It is what they began to live by. They had good meaning behind the laws, the same as the Talmud does in explaining the Torah. All of these statutes eventually lead people away from the truth. Over time, the Constitution gets twisted by certain people in the very same way both the Democrats and the Republicans twist the American Constitution for their own gain. I'm going to read this one. It says here, Micah 6, verse 16. For the statutes of Omri are kept, and all the works of the house of Ahab, and you walk in their counsels, so that I should make you a ruin, and its people a hissing. Therefore you shall bear the shame of my people. When we flee and are together in whatever place we are in, it will not be the American Constitution that rules us. nor any other set of statutes devised by man. It will be Jehovah's Torah and it alone. Each person must learn it and then practice it in their own house and then on the streets as they walk. Oh, that's part of the Shema, or to speak of it, but this is better to do it. Okay, moving on. It says, President to launch Evangelicals for Trump coalition. In an effort to further capture his base, the president will be launching the Evangelicals for Trump coalition in Miami, Florida on January the 3rd. That's past. The Trump campaign's launch of Evangelicals for Trump will be held at a Florida megachurch with a capacity of 7,000 congregants, the campaign said Friday, reports the Washington Times. The outreach event for a key part of the president's base will be held next Friday in Miami at El Rey Jesus or King Jesus International Ministry. Though the Trump campaign previously pledged to launch the coalition, the gesture to hold the president's base comes on the heels of Christianity Today publishing an op-ed calling for Trump's removal from office. Okay. When I was sent this article, I saw the Christian groups falling in line behind President Trump for his support and unfunding of Planned Parenthood. He is stopping the deaths of many more babies, and this is good. But if he is assassinated this year of 2020, oh man, by the left from within the USA or the liberal left outside the USA, then the lines are drawn between the two factions. The LGBT liberal left-leaning pro-abortionists, anti-gun lobbyists, Antifa groups, and those in favor of open borders and asylum cities will fight against the conservative, pro-life Second Amendment Christian right, and they will be chased down and killed by Athaliah. Into this fray will come the German-led EU under the guise of NATO to help. Islamic enclaves will develop and grow. Chaos will be everywhere. Okay, so it's a challenge to read this and try to comprehend it at the same time. Sometimes I'll read something and I'll focus so much energy on the reading of it that I don't internalize what I'm reading. It just doesn't compute to me. I'm focusing so much energy on the reading aspect. Anyway, continuing on. The following link from which this article comes is no longer valid. Whoa. So what I just read to you is no longer the internet. It's been wiped off. Except now it's preserved in video form. Yay. Chapter 4. The importance of the name of the dynastic name of Omri, in brackets Gomri, page 128. We have already examined a number of quotations in which we have seen that the Gentiles used different names for the people of Israel than were used by themselves. Interesting. Notice Dr. Schrader's comments on this subject. Israel. The usual term for the kingdom of Israel in the Syrian inscriptions is not this, as we have already observed. The ordinary designation was rather land of the house of Omri, or land of Omri, or merely land Omri. The cuneiform inscriptions in the Old Testament, Volume 1, page 177. Dr. Schrader has shown very, very clearly that such names as House of Omri, Land of Omri, and Land Omri, that one's kind of funny. It's like land mammal. Land Omri were the usual appellations which the Assyrians and others applied to the northern kingdom of Israel. Notice what the Encyclopedia Britannica has to say regarding Omri. Okay, here we go, buckle up. The dynasty of Omri. The founder of one of the greatest dynasties of Israel, although little is preserved of Omri's history, the fact that the northern kingdom long continued to be called by the Assyrians after his name is a significant indication of his great reputation. Interesting. The northern kingdom of Israel continued to be called by Omri's name for over 2 centuries after the death of Omri, until after the final captivity of Israel in 721 BC. Wow. Page 129. Bit Kumri, the house of Omri. Why is there like a solar flare going on? All right. Oh, because of the lighting behind me. All right. Many historians have recognized that Omri, king of Israel, had founded a great dynasty in the northern kingdom. He was known far and wide among the Syrians, Moabites, and other peoples as a great king. The scriptures also imply that he was a great legislator, not necessarily great in the scriptural sense. How do I get rid of the solar flare? Or the lighting? Maybe like that. Okay. This is like a vlog from the 90s or 2000s, early 2000s. All right, where was I? He was known far and wide among the Syrians, Moabites, and other peoples as a great king. Okay. The scriptures also imply that he was a great legislator, not necessarily great in the scriptural sense, however. The statutes of Omri are kept, and all the works of the house of Ahab. Okay, you know what? I'm going to just let the stream go for just a few seconds. Just if you bear with me, I need a glass of water. Water. Okay. We are back. Okay. Just needed a bit of water. It's like I have British Tourette's. Water. Yeah. Just needed some water. The scriptures also imply that he was a great legislator, not necessarily great in the scriptural sense, however. The statutes of Omri are kept, and all the works of the house of Ahab. Notice further what the Encyclopedia Britannica says regarding Omri. Omri, in the Bible, the first great king of Israel, after the separation of the 2 kingdoms of Israel and Judah, who flourished in the early part of the 9th century BC, and the fact that the land of Israel continued to be known to the Assyrians down to the time of Sargon as House of Omri, indicates the reputation which this little-known king enjoyed. All right. So I'm just going to enunciate and really pronounce the words, like stress the enunciation, because sometimes I feel like when I'm speaking or reading, it isn't well understood, or just sometimes it's hard to hear what I'm actually saying, because I sometimes slur my speech or mumble. Did you notice the last statement from this excerpt? It mentioned the well-known fact that the land of Israel continued to be known to the Assyrians, even down to the time of Sargon, as the house of Omri, indicating that the reputation which the name of Omri had enjoyed. Payment of tribute by Yahweh, in brackets Jehu, the son of Kumri, brackets Omri, who brought silver, gold, lead, and bowls, dishes, cups, and other vessels of gold. Lots of gold. The description son of Kumri is thought merely to show that Jehu was an Israelite. because Israelitish territory was called Bit Qumri. Page 130. Here's another translation of the same cuneiform inscription. Notice the spelling of Omri, Huari, is slightly different from the previous spelling as given by Luckenbill. The tribute of Yahweh, Jehu, son of Huari, Omri. Oh yeah, it is different. Huari. But to whom did Jehu pay this tribute? This question is answered in the following quotation. Jehu, on the black obelisk, Jehu, Yahweh, son of Omri, Khomri, is represented as giving tribute to Shalmaneser II. Following is an interesting statement, showing that the Assyrians became acquainted with the northern kingdom of Israel, first in the time of Omri. Omri seems to have been an able soldier, and he subdued Moab to Israel. This is acknowledged by the Moabite king Mesha in an inscription which has come down to us. The Assyrians first became acquainted with Israel in the time of Omri, and they called the country of the 10 tribes of Israel the land of the house of Omri, even after the extinction of his dynasty. We shall later see that some of the Celts were called by such names as Ombri and Umbri. God has not left us without historical proof to connect his name, Omri, which we can definitely prove Israel bore before her captivity, with the present day descendants of the house of Israel. All right, take a sip. The most important key linking the house of Israel. Page 131. Oh, these lights are getting kind of annoying, aren't they? All right. Keeps doing that. Okay. Try to. I don't know how to. Anyway. The most important key linking the house of Israel. Page 131. Bit Gomri with modern day Israel is the famous Behistun rock inscriptions. These inscriptions, written in cuneiform characters, are of utmost importance in unraveling the history of Israel. Behistun rock inscriptions, key to Israel's identity. Darius I had the famous Behistun rock inscriptions engraved in cuneiform on the steep face of a high rock beside the main road leading from Babylon, in brackets Baghdad, to Media. These important cuneiform inscriptions were written in 3 languages: 1. Persian, 2. Babylonian, and 3. Susian or Elamite. Above the inscription, the picture of the king himself is graven. 9 rebel chiefs are led before him. The 9th is Skunka, the chief of the Scythians, Sake, whom he defeated. The inscriptions are composed the 3 languages, which are written with cuneiform signs and were used in all official inscriptions of the Achaemenian kings. It is interesting to note some of the particulars of the Behistun rock inscriptions. Also notice that this Scythian chief, Skunka, is called Sake. Okay, so the Scythian chief is called Sake. Why? Why is this important? The Sake and the Scythians, as we shall later prove, were basically the same people. In 1835, the difficult and almost inaccessible cliff was first climbed by Sir Henry Rawlinson, who copied and deciphered the inscriptions between 1835 to 1845, and thus completed the reading of the old cuneiform text and laid the foundation of the science of Assyriology, page 132. Here follows excerpts from a translation of the Behistun Rock inscriptions by L.W. King and R.C. Thompson. Thus saith Darius the king, these are the provinces which are subject unto us, and by the grace of outtake there. And by the grace of Ahura Mazda became I king of them. The inscriptions of Darius the Great of Behistun. This translation translates all of the words on the Behistun rock inscriptions in 3 parallel columns. The first column contains the Persian, the second the Susian or the Elamite, the third contains the Babylonian translation. Okay, I just noticed that my voice is it's not going to hold up, so I'm going to have to speak in a lower voice. So it's going to be a lot more like a narrator that you'd hear over a documentary, hopefully. And maybe even calming, but the point isn't to calm you down and make you sleep. The point, it's not an ASMR video. It's to get this reading done. Okay, here we go. So changing gears, shifting down. These inscriptions mention 22 provinces. The 19th province listed by all 3 of these parallel columns is called in the Persian language Scythia, phonetic Saka. In the second column, the same province is called in the Susian language Scythia, phonetic Saka. And in the third column, in the Babylonian language, it is translated in the land of the Cimmerians or Cimmerians, phonetic Gi Mi Ri. So this rock, the Behistun rock, is an important piece of evidence to prove who the lost 10 tribes are. This is an aside. This isn't part of the article. I'm just talking. So what we do know, and you can prove this by doing a lot of research, the people who identify themselves as the Jews today are pretty much one tribe or 3 tribes. Judah, they're the tribe of Judah, Yehuda, and the tribe of the Levites, the priesthood, and some of Benjamin too, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And then the rest of the tribes, which are, there's actually 13 because Joseph got the double portion, Ephraim, Manasseh. So anyhow, we'll just say Joseph, just for the argument's sake. So there are 9 remaining tribes that have yet to be identified. They are known as the lost tribes of Israel. This article is going to shed some light on who they are. They're not lost. They just don't know who they are. They've lost their identity, but they're not physically lost. They've just been dispersed throughout the earth. Here we go. Buckle up. Professor Rawlinson, however, translated the 19th province as the Sake. Keep this in mind, for Saka and Sake all refer to the same people. Let us notice the 3 different names which are here used in these different languages to denote this 19th province. Let me just make sure the microphone is... Where is the microphone? Okay, I'm going to just guess it's this whole thing here. There's no hole. Usually there's like a little hole. But anyway, I'm just going to speak into it. Hopefully that works. Amplifies my voice so I don't have to talk too loud. All right, where were we? Let us notice the three different names which are here used in these different languages to denote this 19th province. Number one, Scythia, phonetic Saka, or according to Professor Rawlinson, Sake. And two, Scythia, phonetic Saka. This just repeated twice, didn't it? And three, the land of the Sumerians, phonetic Gimiri. The next question confronting us is, who were these Scythians? Saka? Who were these Scythians? Saka, Sake, Sumerians or Cimmerians, and the Gimiri. Who are these people? These are the various names which were applied to a people mentioned by Darius I and listed as the 19th of the 22 provinces which were subject to him. Excuse me. Variations for the name Omri. The ethnic name of the Gimiri first occurs in the cuneiform. Oh, I'm sorry about this lighting behind me. Just trying to, that'll probably, what's going on? Okay. I'm trying to, this lighting business, oh man. Anyway, just gonna have to deal with it, I guess. This is more of an audio video anyway. It's not so much a video or visual video. Variations of the name Omri. The ethnic name of Gimiri first occurs in the cuneiform records of the time of Darius Hystaspes as the Semitic equivalent of the Aryan name Saka, bracket Sakai. Whether at the same time these Gimiri or Saka are really Cymric Celts or Kimric Celts, we cannot positively say. But the Babylonian title of Gimiri, as applied to the Sake, is not a vernacular, but a foreign title. Gimiri is not vernacular, it's foreign, and may simply mean the tribes. Notice Rawlinson appeared to believe that these Saka or Gimiri were Cymric Celts. Also note that he says Sake may mean the tribes. No nation or people have been spoken of so long and so consistently by the words the tribes as the people of Israel. One still hears about the 12 tribes of Israel, the lost tribes, and similar expressions. Notice what Rawlinson says regarding these names. As on the one hand, however, the termination of the name is certainly Miri or Miri, while on the other, the identification of the Persian Sake or Scythians with the people named by the Greeks Kimerioi would seem highly probable. I venture to read the entire name Gimiri. Following are some important comments by Dr. Pinches regarding the name Omri, page 134. Oh, that means it is sunset. I don't know which kind of sunset, but probably the early sunset, not the nautical one. There's so many kinds of sunsets, so it's still Shabbat, but towards the end of Shabbat. Page 134. That Jehu who destroyed the house of Omri should be called son of Omri. In the inscriptions of Shalmaneser II of Assyria is strange. That Jehu should be called son of Omri is strange and needs explanation. That Jehu may have been in some way related with Jehoram and therefore a descendant of Omri is possible and even probable. That he was not descended from him in a direct line, I think he meant direct line, not diarist. It says diarist, but I think he means direct. In a direct line is certain, It is well to point out that the Hebrews and other Semitics commonly spoke of one as being a son of, not only of the person's immediate father, but this expression was also applied to one who was a grandson, or a great grandson, or a great great grandson, and so on, to any number of generations. Thus, Christ, or Mashiach, was a son of David. The word father was also applied to one's distant parents, as well as to one's own immediate father. Okay, I think that viewer says a 1 there. I think that's actually me viewing myself, but whatever. Omri, pronounced as Gomri. It is noteworthy that the Syrian form of the name Yahweh shows that the unpronounced aleph at the end was called Hem Yahuwah. What? Omri was likewise pronounced in accordance with the older system, before the aleph became ayin. Humri shows that they said at that time, Gomri. The statement just made by Dr. Pinches is of utmost importance. Did you notice that the word Humri was pronounced, according to the older way of pronouncing the Hebrew, as Gomri? In other words, the names Humri and Gomri of the ancient historians refer to the same people. This is a most important point to keep in mind. The names Humri and Gomri are synonymous and consistently refer to the same people. According to the Behistun rock inscriptions, the Gimiri Gomri were the same people as the Sake or Scythians, who gave birth to the Saxons, Celts, Cimmerians, Scots, Angles, Gauls, Kimri, and other peoples who settled northwestern Europe. It is also important to point out that the Hebrew word Beth means house, Beth El means house of God, Beth Lehem means house of bread. The Syrian language was also a Semitic language closely related to Hebrew, but the Syrian word for house is bit, not Beth, as in the Hebrew. The expressions bit Omri, or bit Humri, or bit Humria, or bit Gomri, all of which meant the house of Omri, referred to the northern house of Israel, the house or kingdom over which Omri and his dynasty had ruled for many years. On the Behistun rock inscriptions, we have seen that the words Scythia, Saka, Cimmerians, Gemiri all refer to the same people. Later on, why does this light keep getting bright? Okay. Later on, we shall see a number of historical sources proving that the Kimri, Kumri, and the Cimmerians were all the same people, and were always placed by all historians in the extreme western part of Europe. Today we know the Welsh still call themselves Kimri. That's true, they do. That's in Gaelic? I'm not sure. Or is that I don't know. The Cimmerians, according to the ancient historians, were located in the extreme western parts of Europe, including the British Isles. For further proof that the Cimmerians, or Cimbri, dwelt in the extreme western parts of Europe, check the following references: Homer, Odyssey 11, 13 to 19, Herodotus 1. There's a bunch of references. Israel called Cimmerians, Kimiri, and Cumri. The importance of the dynastic name of Omri, Gomri, in connection with the later history of the people of Israel has been clearly demonstrated. We have seen Omri in the house of Omri, Bit Humri, and the land of Omri, Mat Humri, is mentioned by the Assyrians. It has also been pointed out from a number of historical sources that the Assyrians continue to call Israel. What the? I didn't say Siri. Okay. I should put this on airplane mode just so don't get Siri to mistakenly. The importance of the dynastic name of Omri in connection with the later history of the people of Israel has been clearly demonstrated. We have seen Omri in the house of Omri, the land of Omri, as mentioned by the Assyrians. It has also been pointed out from a number of historical sources that the Assyrians continued to call Israel by the name of Omri for centuries after he had died. They were in fact still speaking of the people of Omri and the territory of northern Israel as Mat Bit Humri and as Mat Omri at the time of the captivity of Israel. From the Behistun rock inscriptions, we have seen clearly pointed out. What? That doesn't make sense. From the Behistun rock inscriptions, we have clearly pointed out that these inscriptions speak of the Kimiri as being identical with the Cimmerians, who are also the same as the Scythians and the Saka. Since the Cimmerians are the same people as the Gomri, according to Dr. Pinches, let us now trace these people from the land of their captivity in southwestern Asia to their present lands. Who were the Cimmerians, Gimiri, and the Kimri? The Encyclopedia Britannica gives the following account of the Cimmerians or Cimmerians. Kimeri Herodotus, in his account of Scythia, regards them as the early inhabitants of South Russia, after whom the Bosporus, Cimmerius, and other places were named, driven by the Scyths along by the Caucasus into Asia Minor, where they maintained themselves for a century. Certainly, it is that in the middle of the 7th century BC, Asia Minor was ravaged by northern nomads. I have to I don't know how to do this, but just talk like this. One body of whom is called in Assyrian sources Gimirai and is represented as coming through the Caucasus, the very region of Israel's captivity. To the north of the Euxine, their main body was merged in the invading Scyths. Later writers identified them with the Cimbri or Cimbri of Jutland or Jutland, who are probably Teutonized Celts or Celts. According to the above account, the Cimmeri, I'm just going to say, it says Cimmeri. I'm going to pronounce that as a hard K, not like an S from this point forward. According to the above account, the Cimmeri lived anciently in the vicinity of the Black Sea. They early had an encounter with the Scyths. Really? It was about 650 BC, 100 years after Israel's captivity, that this occurred. Remember, some of the tribes of Israel went into captivity south of the Caucasus in 741 BC. Is that right? Also, note carefully that at least one body of these Chimeri were called by the Assyrians Gemirai, and also that they are represented as coming through the Caucasus. This is the same area where Israel was taken captive. We are informed by this article that their main body was merged to the north of the Black Sea, Euxine, and the invading Scyths. We shall later see some of the Scythians were called Celto-Scythians. These Cimmerians were also later identified with the Cimbri of Jutland, and we are further told that they were probably Teutonized Celts. Observe that the names of Cimbri, Chiemari, and Celts or Celts are all inextricably connected and are in turn closely allied to the Scythians, whom we shall later study in much greater detail. We are further informed by the Encyclopaedia Britannica that these Cimmerians or Cimbri wandered along the Danube for many years, and that the Cimbri later had an alliance with the Teutoni, and that they invaded northern Italy. Robert Owen says, getting tangled up with my cords here. Robert Owen says, in leaving the Far East, they, the Cimmerians or Cimbri, must have occupied a country south of the Caucasus, extending from the river Araxes to the Palus Maiotis, or Sea of Azov, where Herodotus remarks on the many places yet bearing the name of Cimmerian in his time. Did you notice that these Cimmerians had formerly occupied a country south of the Caucasus? This is the very territory to which Israel had been taken captive. So we see that these people must have moved northwards through the Caucasus Mountains about 1 century after going into captivity. I have sought in the nomenclature of rivers and mountains name grounds for this being the occupation of the country east of the Euxine Sea, Black Sea, by Celts or traces of their presence, which any temporary eruption in later times will never suffice to explain. Owen then shows that the Cimri had long occupied this territory. He mentions some tribal displacements so common in barbaric Asia. The Massagetae invaded the Scythians, and they in turn threatened the Cimmerioi, who chose to avoid an unequal conflict by fleeing. Thus early began the inveterate duel, didn't even know that was a word, inveterate duel between the Celts and the Teutons, the Cimri and the Saxons. This established historic event occurred 635 BC. So I'm going to just look up the word inveterate. Don't know what that means, so let's look it up. Merriam-Webster, inveterate. Okay, so it says here, firmly established by long persistence. So confirmed, basically. So rereading that sentence, thus early began the confirmed duel between the Celts and the Teutons, the Cimri and the Saxons. Okay, I'm going to finish this water. I avoid dwelling on France or Gallia because its Celtic origin is incontestable. The proofs are abundant, and my aim is to illustrate only a portion of the race. The Cimri, as the Welsh still call themselves, To them, their American brethren are still Britons. He then mentions that the account of themselves rendered by the Cymry of Britain makes them to consist of 3 tribes of the same stock. These 3 tribes were the number 1, the Cymry, number 2, the Logres, Gruis, it's hard to pronounce, and number 3, the Brython. I cannot resist concluding that either the Cymry were Cymry, or else that in remote times the tongues of Celt and Goth agreed. It is not impossible that some of the Cimerioi who retired from their Asiatic home before the onset of the Scythians took a northern course, which the pursuers afterwards followed under the conduct of Odin from the Sea of Azov to the shores of the Baltic. I just lifted up higher, so I don't know, I feel like my eyes are getting heavy or something. Owen explains that before the Bretons reached England, they had invented or inherited the essentials of an earlier civilization. Some of their traditions resemble Semitic records of antediluvian patriarchs. He continues, few of the modern Celts, Cymry, Brezonot, and Gael, 1st and 2nd Peter, Prague, are aware that the Apostle St. Paul addressed an epistle to a people of their blood and kindred. Yet such is indubitably substantiated by the facts. It will be more appropriate to cover this subject in greater detail in a later chapter, but it is interesting to note that Robert Owen in the preceding statements mentioned that the Celts, Cymry, Brezonot, and the Gael are all the same people. License makes this a very interesting statement. I confess, but for the universal tradition which assigns our British descent to Japheth, I should have been rather inclined to attribute to the British Celts a Semitic origin, which we find in Britain, and also on account of the language, the traces of which we still find, the traces of which we find still attaching to the names of those places where they carried on their religious ceremonies. In other words, what License admits is that the facts prove that the British are, after all, Semitic in origin, and not Japhetic as tradition would have us believe. License remarks. At the 1 hour mark, I'm going to just take a break. I might stop the video and just start a new one. License remarks, the Cimmerians, seeming to be the same people with the Gauls or Celts, Celt under a different name, and it is observable that the Welsh, who are descended from the Gauls, still call themselves Cymry or Cymry. On page 27 we read, the identity of the Cymry of Wales with the Cymry of the Romans seems worthy of being accepted as an historic fact, upon the ground stated by Niebuhr and Arnold. Page 141. Notice how License identifies all of the following peoples and makes them come from Armenia. If you know what, cancel that. I'm going to continue this video until I finish reading this article, this newsletter. We just take more water breaks. Page 141. Notice how License identifies all the following peoples and makes them come from Armenia, the very place where Israel was first taken into captivity. Armenia is located in the area just south of the Caucasus Mountains. License says, the chain of evidence seems to be complete. Appian says the Cimori were Celts. Diodorus says that the Cimbri were Gauls or Celts. Celts, the goals were Galate per syncope, Gelte or Celte. The names are synonymous. The way in which Mr. Rawlinson, in the essay from which I have quoted, brings the Cymric Celts from Armenia to Britain is most masterly. It confirms all the traditions of the Welsh, the views of Nennius and the Anglo-Saxon chronicles, and all our earliest histories, and to anyone who had studied the question, seems most convincing. Notice that license shows that the name Gelte is the name as Celte, and this name is related to Galate, Galli, and other cognate names. I'm going to look up cognate because I don't know what that means, so let's look it up. Cognate. So it means of the same or similar nature, related by blood. Synonym, alike, resemblant. So similar, okay. So similar, let's go with that. Okay, this name is related to Galate, Galli, and other similar names. These points all show conclusively that these are all basically the same people. It is interesting to note that, according to License, the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle also shows that some of the early inhabitants of Britain had come from Armenia. What? So that means the English are related to the Armenians? I mean, I guess you could see that when you look at someone like Mr. Bean, for example, Rowan Atkinson, and you put him side by side with an Armenian man, and you see similarities there, I guess. Here's the actual wording of this as it is found in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. The island Britain is 800 miles long and 200 miles broad, and there are in the island 5 nations: English, Welsh or British, Scottish, Pictish, and Latin. The first inhabitants were the Britons, who came from Armenia and first peopled Britain southward. This statement clearly shows that the British, or the Britons, had their origin in Armenia. Bear in mind that the lost 10 tribes were deported from the land of Israel into the district immediately south of the Caucasus Mountains, or to the vicinity of Armenia. License also shows that Gemiri were the same people as the Kimari. Like I said, I didn't even start from the beginning. I started like right in the middle of this newsletter. It's quite long, as you can tell. So the Gimiri were the same people as the Kimari. Sharon Turner Sharon's a guy? Okay. Sharon Turner, in his History of the Anglo-Saxons, mentions the following points regarding the Cimmerians. He shows that the Celtic language was the same as the Cimmerian language. Celtic language is the same. Oh, really? He says the Celts were the same people as the Cimmerians, and that they inhabited the far west of Europe. Sorry to think. I'm just gonna stop and think. I want to try to understand what I'm reading, not just read it. The Cimmerians and Celts were the same as the Cimbri, or to be exact, he says, or to be more exact, he says that the Cimmerici of the Greeks were the Cimbroi of the Greeks, and the Cimbri of the Latin writers was not only the opinion of Posidonius, whom Strabo quotes. Diodorus Siculus expressly says that to those who were called Cimmerios, the appellation of Cimbron was applied in the process of time. Plutarch, in his Life of Marius, also identified the Cimbri with the Cimmerioi. Turner shows that the Cimbri were a branch of the Cimmerians. The Cymri were the same, according to Turner, as the Cymri, and they were the same people as the Cimbri. The Cymri were the first inhabitants of Britain. So the Welsh were the first inhabitants of Britain, according to this information. He mentions that the Welsh triads show that Hu Cadarn, or Hu the Strong, Hu, Hu, or Mighty, led the people of the nation of Cymri through the Hazy, or the German Ocean, into Britain and to Lida Amorica in France. Turner mentions that the Cymri come from the eastern parts of Europe, the regions where Constantinople now stands. This is mentioned also in Triad. Like I said, I was born in Canada, but for some reason or other, I now speak with a British accent, kind of like Tourette's. So if that happens, it happens. Plus, Canada's a loyalist country anyway. We're the loyalists to the crown. So there's bound to be some, mixing of British. And I'm talking about Britain, history of Britain. So whatever. I'll just go back and forth from English accent, however accents I have. I think I have like 20. All right, continuing on. This is mentioned also in Triad, page 57. Another interesting point mentioned by Turner is that the Cimbri swore by a brazen bull which they carried with them. That's idolatrous, is it not? Keep this fact in mind because a number of historical sources show that the early inhabitants of Britain swore by the brazen bull and used the symbol of an ox or a bull commonly as a representative figure for their people. This all ties in with the early history of Israel, who, even in the time of Moses and Aaron, set up the golden calf and worshipped it. At the time when the 10 tribes of Israel revolted from the leadership of the throne of David, the first thing that Jeroboam, the ruler of the northern kingdom, did was to set up 2 golden calves, one in Dan and the other in Beersheba. Note, Beersheba is incorrect. It should read Beth El. The reference for this is 1 Kings 12, verse 29. The tribal emblem of Joseph was a bull and or a heifer, according to various accounts. The people of Britain still use this symbol on the coat of arms. It is there called a unicorn. Also, John Bull is symbolical for the nation or people of Britain. Turner mentions that the Keltoi were the same people as the Galatai, and that the Galatai were the same as the Gali, and that the Keltoi were one of the branches of the Cimmerian stock. Actually, it's actually a lot easier to speak with a British accent than a Canadian accent. I find it harder, in fact, to read in a Canadian accent, so I'm switching to the English accent. Grant says that the northern 1/3 of France in Caesar's time was inhabited by the Belgae, who were a Nordic people of the Cymric division of Celtic speech. He mentions that the Cimmerians, the Sakai, and the Massagetae all sprang from the Scythians. He also points out that the Cimmerians were Nordics who entered Asia Minor by the Caucasus about 650 before Christ. Again, note that the Cimmerians came into Asia Minor by way of the Caucasus Mountains about 100 years after the first segment of Israel had been deported into that very region in 741 before Christ. Grant says, the Nordics, referring to Cimmerians, hold on, let's rewind a bit. The Cimmerians came into Asia Minor by way of the Caucasus 100 years after Israel had been deported into that very region. Coincidence or not? The Nordics, referring to to Cimmerians, etc., also swept down through Thrace into Greece and Asia Minor, while other large and important groups entered Asia partly through the Caucasus Mountains, but in greater strength. In greater strength, they migrated around the northern and eastern sides of the Caspian Aral Sea. Notice how this indicates the very territory to which Israel had been deported about 100 years earlier. When the Assyrian power was beginning to wane, these captive peoples availed themselves of the opportunity to flee from under the oppressive yoke of their Assyrian overlords. That the Cimbri and the Cimmeri were identical is clear from the following statements. Cimbri, a Celtic people, probably of the same race as the Cymri. They appeared to have inhabited the peninsula which was called after them Chersonesus Kimorica. Smith, Smaller Classical Dictionary. Let me have a drink. This is getting quite long. Speaking of these people, Smith says, Cimmeri, the historical Cimmeri, dwelt on the Palus Maiotis, Sea of Azov, in the Tauric Chersonesus, and Asiatic Sarmatia. I have an Italian accent too, kind of, because I speak a bit of Italian. Anywho, in this instance, the Cimmeri are mentioned as living north of the Black Sea. If we carefully piece together all of the various points which are clearly brought out by the different historians concerning the Cimmerians, the Gimiri, and the Kimri, we are brought to the following conclusions. Conclusion time. Number one, the Cimmerians appear in history in the same general vicinity to which Israel had been taken captive. Number two, they appear about 1 century after the first tribes of Israel were deported into the regions south of the Caucasus Mountains near the Black and Caspian Seas, about 741 BC. Excuse me. Number three, all of these peoples are closely related. Let me just I'm going to pause. All right, continuing. Number three, all of these peoples are closely related, i.e., the Cimmerians, Gimiri, and the Kimri. Number four, they leave the area of Armenia or the Caucasus regions and arrive in northwest Europe. In fact, as we will see later, branches of these Cimmerians penetrated into Central Europe, northern Italy, Spain, and into many countries of Europe, as well as into Britain and Scandinavia. Number five, we have also observed that these Cimmerian or Cymric peoples are also closely related to the Gauls and Celts but this particular phase will be covered more thoroughly in a later chapter. Number 6. All of these peoples were sprung from the Scythian horde and were mixed freely with them. The fact that they fought with the Scythians does not mean they were not close relatives of the Scythians. We have previously observed that the tribes of Israel, even while still living in the promised land, were continually warring among themselves, as is also mentioned in James chapter 1, verse 1 and 4, verse 1. Editor's note: James 1:1 is addressed to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad. It does not refer to them fighting in the promised land. Good to know. Number 7, the Cimmerians were the same as the Gimiri, who were also the same as the Gomri, or the people of Omri. These peoples were different branches of dispersed Israel. Oh, we're coming up to the end. This concludes this part of the study. Or as in other newsletters, this is my first evidence that I bring before you, the jury, for your consideration. We shall look at other not so well known facts about our history in upcoming newsletters. This study has shown you that those of us from England or Northwestern Europe of Anglo-Saxon or Celtic descent are in fact from the supposedly lost 10 tribes of Israel. But wait, I have more to come. So do not be convinced by just one piece of evidence. The end. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that made sense. I know I switched back and forth from accents, but I mean, I can't help it. Sometimes that's my flaw, I guess, or maybe it's a advantage. Thing is, I don't want to get too off topic, but when you speak multiple languages, when you encounter and you become acquainted with people from all over the world, as you do in Toronto, and as you will in life, if you travel and you're around different cultures, you will pick up different accents, kind of by osmosis. So that was the newsletter from last week. Just reading the comments through here, see if there's anything interesting. Okay, someone commented that Trump will not be assassinated. This is pure fear-mongering. How can I save up months of cash? I am barely making it as it is now. Taxed all around. Doesn't the Bible say be content? Very troubling to see the comparison of our USA Constitution to statutes of Omri. I'm still the same opinion. The statutes of Omri are still hated by Jehovah. Okay, I'm going to read this last. This is from Joseph Dumond, who is the author of the newsletters. His comment: we need to incorporate the Torah more in all of our lives. If we did that, then we would have liberty and the freedom of speech and the right to bear arms as told to us in the Torah, not any constitution made by men. Wilson. Just scanning through, see if there's anything that I find interesting. Jan's comment. Okay. Omri Steel. Omri Land Stella. So it's, excuse me, there appears to be more evidence regarding that in the comments from the comment by Jan. The Omri Stele contains the earliest reference in Assyrian literature that mentions Edom. Interesting. Ras. David Smith's comment. Okay. Um, yep. And then Joseph's response to his comment. The word weeks is Shabua. Can also be read Shavua. Shavuot is the plural for the singular week. In Daniel 9, the word used is speaking about the Feast of Weeks, Shavuot, not a singular week. The Feast of Weeks is the counting of 7 weeks until Shavuot. On the 50th day, Daniel is speaking about 70 times 49, not 70 times 7. Thanks for your reply, Joseph. Joseph's reply to the reply. It's hard to read. It's all dispersed. I can't make that out. I'm going to try to read that. And there's another comment. It's just comment after comment, and it's hard to read because the formatting is very. I'm going to try to reload and see if I can make out the comments because it's not registering. It's not. They aren't displaying properly on my device. The comments at the end there. Let's see if it'll work. It's gonna scroll. Yeah, they're not displaying correctly. Something wrong with the format there. Oh, when I go to landscape, it shows up normal. Okay, right, just to go to landscape mode, you can read the comments properly. Okay, this is pretty relevant. This comment here by anonymous, or it says here, David Smith. Joseph, you wrote Shavuot is the plural for a singular week. Okay. Did you just arbitrarily decide in Daniel 9:24 that the plural Shavuot indicated Feast of Weeks and the other places it is used? It just means weeks, like in Daniel 10:2 and 3. You also wrote when you count 7 times 49 years from the Jubilee cycle of the Exodus, you arrive at the time when King David, the Messiah, comes. Just as Daniel 9:25 says, and then you add the 62 times 49, which will bring you to 1996, today our time. Are you saying during the Exodus a command was given by somebody to restore Jerusalem? However, in 1 Chronicles 11:8, we are told David and Joab built and repaired Jerusalem. 1 Chronicles 11:8, and he, David, built the city round about from the Millo in complete circuit, and Joab repaired the rest of the city. Then you must believe David died after 1996. Daniel 9:26. And after the 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off. This is Joseph's reply. David, do not presume or state what I believe. Treat me with the same respect, or you would like to be treated, or go fly a kite. The second Messiah is not talking about King David. It is talking about his anointed, that is Israel. Oh, the one who gave the command to go was Jehovah to Moses in Exodus 3 and 4. Go and read it for yourself. I will also let you go and figure out who the second Messiah is talking about. We have explained this in great detail in our book. Please go and get them, and then come back and we can answer your questions then. David Smith. Sorry, Joseph, didn't intend to upset you, and certainly didn't mean to disrespect you. Just wanted to point out that none of us can choose to indiscriminately give our own meaning to Hebrew words that suit our doctrine. Otherwise, we'd have 5,000 different doctrines. What am I saying? what I am saying, we do have at least that many different doctrines. If we only accept the words as they are written. I searched Exodus 3 and 4, and there was not a single mention of Jerusalem. One other thing, if I may, Daniel's vision in chapters 10 to 12 is not related to his chapter 9 visit by Gabriel. They are in a different time and place. Thank you for your time. Shalom, David. There is a link in this newsletter to a Zoom meeting that Joseph did. I watched it yesterday. I think many of your questions would be answered by watching it. If we are indeed in the last days, then, per the book of Daniel, someone should be given understanding of Daniel's prophecy. Makes sense? I, as many who comment on the site, have looked at many teachings on the subject over the years. This is talking about Daniel chapter 9, I believe, as to the 70 weeks and the different time frames given in that chapter. In my opinion, which understanding to use for the translated English word weeks becomes self-evident when you start adding up the numbers the way Joseph is taught. It is the only way all of the numbers in Daniel's prophecies actually work and match up with feast days on the calendar. Again, in my opinion, there are too many pieces of the puzzle that fit. Could this understanding be wrong? What they're talking about is Joseph Dumond, the creator of the CitedMoon.com website. He has a book called The 2300 Days of Hell. 2300 Days of Hell. Talks about the Daniel 9 prophecy and how his interpretation of it, his understanding is that it isn't how most of the mainstream understand it. It wasn't talking about Yehoshua or Jesus Christ. It's talking about King David. It's talking about other anointeds, because if you really if you really do your research, Yehoshua, Jesus, did not use the book of Daniel to prove his messiahship. Okay. All right. Could this understanding be wrong? Sure, but what other teaching out there even compares? That's a good question. Really, I'm asking. Do you know of one that works with all the nuisances? I think he means nuances. With all the nuances that Joseph's teachings do. If you take the word weeks and apply any other understanding, the numbers in Daniel just won't work. Yeah, that's true. There's it's detailed in his book, 2300 Days of Hell. Since coming into Torah about 15 years ago, all the other teachings on the matter have fallen flat because there have been major holes. I bought into some along the way. So when I saw Joseph's teaching on Daniel, I studied it for a couple of years before starting to share it, not wanting to lead anyone down a mistaken path. The bottom line is, I can't find any holes in the 2300 days teaching. Plus, it vastly increased my understanding, on many specific questions I've had over the years, and confirmed, plus expanded my limited understanding of the coming captivity. Shalom. Thank you, Wilson. Well said. That's from Joseph E. Okay, Wilson. Talking about a Zoom meeting. Peter. Okay, so that's the end of the comments. And that's the end of the video. I'm going to end the stream. It's going to be an hour and 30 minutes. I didn't expect it to be this long, but actually, no, I did. I expected it to be at least an hour, possibly 2 hours. So I'm going to read the next newsletter. I'm going to take a break just to eat some stuff. And I want to stay up to speed with the newsletters. I want to do a live stream every Shabbat, preferably Friday night, Saturday morning, something like that, during the Shabbat. And it is the end of Shabbat. I mean, it is pretty dark outside. You can probably see the stars. So depending on how you observe the Shabbat, it's been a good Shabbat. Praise, praise Yah, and just happy. I'm just so blessed to be able to do this, to read this newsletter, to have this newsletter, to have limited understanding as to what my roles and responsibilities are as a human being, and to be able to share this with people online. And there's one viewer. I think that's me. I think that's just me. I don't think anyone's actually watching. But anyway, so I hope to have the next one up. I'm going to start that very soon. Okay, let's end the stream. Okay, may Yah bless you all. And I'll see you very soon when I do the next video, which is in a little bit. Just going to start that up after I eat and just get my camera a little bit better and angles and whatnot. Okay. Shalom. Are you sure? Yes.